Jai Guru, everyone.
Hey, Guru.
Guru.
Welcome to the next chapter of Yogananda podcast. We're going through the excellent book, The Autobiography of a Yogi, line by line. We have reached chapter 19, and the title is My Master in Calcutta Appears in Serampore. Sounds intriguing already. We got full house. We got Chris, Lauren, Priyank here. How are you guys doing?
Very good.
Very
Good,
well.
thank you.
Excellent. I think I even behind Lauren and Priyank, I see some sunlight. I think the weather has turned. Yeah.
Ish.
In, in
Almost
England,
out of
that's
winter.
always a highlight. That's always a highlight in England. I remember that. Yeah, so we are starting a new chapter. We finished the chapter 18, and we can talk a bit about the expectations in this chapter. Priyank, do you want to drive this one?
Yeah, sure. So, a couple of things come to mind. Firstly, the core theme of this chapter is obviously Sri Yukteswar appearing in two places at once, and we've already had this before, right? In chapter 3, the saint with two bodies. So it'd be nice to compare and contrast to why that happened there and why Mukunda is privileged and blessed experience to be experiencing this now, and what the meaning of that blessing is for him and for us as well. And also the theme of telepathy and is a thing in here, and projecting thoughts and receiving them. And that's also a theme in chapter 28, which is Gashi reborn and discovered, where Mukunda or Swami Yogananda at that time does what Sri Yukteswar kind of did to him. So it'll be cool to compare and contrast that as well. And it's interesting to hopefully see, we'll discuss why Mukunda was able to receive Sri Yukteswar's telepathic thoughts through his intuition, and why Dijen was not, and why we are not as well, of course, because we're probably in the Dijen category rather than the Mukunda category when Guruji sends us messages. Well, I speak for myself. I don't know about the three of you illustrious sages. And our illustrious listeners, of course. The final thing I wanted to look forward to was how we can ensure that we don't miss these messages that Guruji sends us through the ether.
Yeah, Guruji mentions that in different places that God is talking to us all the time, and we just have to listen. We have to tune in with Him, and that's a really good reminder in this chapter that if we are in tune, then Guruji will guide us.
Yeah, inspires you to try and listen more, huh? But then if your receiver is broken, it's not so easy to get the message. I really like how Guruji places the chapters in Autobiography. There's a real change of pace and tone, I feel, with this chapter, as opposed to the last chapter. That was about someone who had got all these powers but wasn't actually spiritually advanced. And then we have this chapter of a true saint, as an avatar who is with God, very spiritually advanced, and seeing the difference between the two. And I think it's a really nice change from one to the other.
Welcome change, I must say.
Very welcome.
Even though it's advanced topics, I'm sure we can relate to these more than the previous ones.
And I don't have to feel uneasy about this one, so it's nice.
You're not uneasy by telepathy, eh?
No, that feels nice to me. I would happily get a message from Sri Yukteswar.
And physical manifestations of Guru in the room that you're in.
Well,
did you guys ever try? Did you guys ever try to send telepathic messages with any success?
I've had a few successes actually.
Wow,
yeah.
That's cool.
But they're very, very subtle, I'd say, especially with ones that you're very close to, or like when you and your friends are like really in sync at certain stages.
Yeah.
What is this, by the way? Is this a real mudra, or
Yuri's Yuri's Revenge, isn't it?
Are we talking Red Alert? Or...
Yes.
Yes, I got the reference.
Hardcore gamers.
Yeah, it's gone right over my head.
Yeah.
I was thinking, what is this about?
There was, I'm pretty sure, I'm actually trying to find it quickly here because I'm pretty sure I read just last week about a case where there were folks who did a study on telepathy, and I think it was children with some kind of disabilities working with their caretakers or their mothers, something along those lines. I don't want to mess it up too much, so I'll stop there. But it was a big news story very recently, where they were able to show beyond doubt that these there was the connection there between two peoples, where one person was thinking a thing and the other person was able to write it down immediately. It was quite it made the rounds on X. I'll see if I can dig it out, but they're finding new evidence every day, really, on this subject.
Yeah, I did a quick Google browse on that as well. If I could find any good stories about telepathy, and there's a ton out there. There's really a lot. I don't know if they're what's the right word, like scientifically curated yet. I don't, but I do believe that everyone has that power of telepathy and mental communication, but it's just not very strong in this age in humans. It's maybe a bit hit and miss, and maybe what Priyank said made me think that maybe some people who are closer, maybe they have an easier time communicating than somebody who you don't know at all, right? Yeah, interesting subject. I also browsed Guruji's books about the topic quite a bit, and I felt like he regards it more of a distraction. I think that's the word Chris used earlier. Like, not like something that we should really work towards to master. There are other things we should master, like our spiritual progress does not depend on telepathy the way I understand it. Anyways, but it's still great, very, very interesting. And so let's get right into the chapter. So the first, it starts out with a friend of Mukunda, Dijen. He's a colleague of his at Serampore College. We know Guruji now switched. He's no longer going to Kolkata. He's going to Serampore College now this year. And one of his colleagues there, he told him that at times he has atheistic doubts, but then he also thinks that the soul has such possibilities that need to be explored, and we would miss out if we don't explore them. That's a thought that I think resonates with us and makes a lot of sense. And when Mukunda heard that, he thought Dijen might be someone I could introduce to my guru, Preoccupations.
Can I just make a sort of passing remark on the comment of often beset by atheistic doubts? He's essentially saying he's bombarded by these thoughts. They arise from somewhere. He's essentially the observer, so he's observing that he's exposed to these thoughts regularly. And there's a lot of teachings on this, and I just kind of feel lucky that these aren't necessarily some of my doubts that I have. I have other things that crop up and come up very frequently that I guess are part of my karma and everything. But I just want to make a passing remark on how everybody, due to past lives of thoughts, words, and actions, has these repetitive issues throughout their incarnations, and this is just one that this individual's having to deal with. But it was just it's interesting word, the word beset, and the underlying meaning behind that. Through our teachings, we understand what that means.
Absolutely. There's a little reading from the Divine Romance. It's just a little paragraph we could read out where Guruji makes the point to one of his devotees that even though if you believe in an afterlife, or if you have an atheistic belief and think this life is it and you're over, you should always choose right action and live rightly now. Do you mind reading this, Chris?
Once an atheist came to talk with me. He told me he didn't believe in an afterlife. It was his conviction that when we die, that is the end of our existence. I said, "Do you know for certain? Suppose there is an afterlife suppose there is life after death. Isn't it more practical to live rightly now? Then, if there is a hereafter, you will be rewarded for your good actions. Even if there is no hereafter, you will find inner peace and happiness in this life if you live it well."
Beautiful. And that's something that makes sense, right? Like, if you feel like nothing has any consequence that I do in this life, my existence ends when I die, it's a pretty big bet to make, right? If you don't know.
If you're a man of, or woman of uncertain temperament, but you are one of science and mathematics, then hedging your bets, as Mike said, in this realm, you don't really have that much to lose, especially in the meditation and yoga path, because the scientific benefits of these exercises are like there regardless of your belief in faith in your gurus and gods. So you only stand to gain, right? But if it is true and then you haven't done this stuff, then you've lost a lot. It's not a balanced trade.
Yeah. And I think Guruji also makes the point that if you live a balanced spiritual life, you will not only be rewarded in your next life, but also in this life. I think your life is better. It's so there's win-win. It's
Logical.
Logical, that's right. So the next sentence that Guruji says, he's quite I find that I was a bit surprised by that. I don't know how well he knew Dijen, but he tells him straight away, Sri Yukteswarji will initiate you into Kriya Yoga. And he said, and it calms the dualistic turmoil by a divine inner certainty. And that's what we're looking for, that the divine inner certainty. But I was a bit surprised that Kriya Yoga is not something that would happen after a long time in the hermitage or something, but it was very, very forthcoming with Kriya Yoga.
I get the feeling that when it comes to direct transmission from a guru to a disciple of Kriya, it's much the restrictions are much less than what we are asked to commit to now. Because when, for example, when Mukunda meets his former disciple, when he was going around Vrindavan and Mathura and Krishna's, when he has that bet with Ananta, he meets that disciple from former life and he initiates him there and then, right? And similarly, Mukunda's received initiation from other gurus, and so I feel like, yeah, for them to initiate, the requirements aren't as stringent. But going back to this backwards a little bit about this sentence about is man not missing his real identity if he fails to explore them? I really, really love that because it really speaks to the purpose of this birth and the purpose of our life and why we have, we're here to rediscover our nature, which we've forgotten, and to find or know that this is a dream and nothing's real and all that good stuff. But yeah, it was quite nice that Sri Yukteswar is going to initiate him, and that Dijen Babu could benefit from that just by being a roommate of Mukunda. And of course, there's no such thing as coincidence when Mukunda kindly invites him to benefit.
Yeah, and it has the effect because Dijen goes to meet Sri Yukteswar, and it makes quite the impact on him, as you would imagine. I think Sri Yukteswar has an impact on anyone he meets, his divine presence. And Guruji says he received such spiritual peace that he was soon a constant visitor, which is beautiful. Which also means that Dijen is spiritually inclined and receptive, right? So he's ready, probably. And maybe that's also something that Mukunda felt, and we can't forget that Mukunda is also an avatar, so he's in very good company here, Dijen.
Yeah. And just to be around the avatar,
Mm-hmm.
that must have some sort of accelerant effect, you would think, as well. But I don't know about what you guys think with atheists. I know, Lauren, you've sort of confessed in the past that you were an atheist at one point. But I actually think of atheists as being closer to God than your common person who doesn't think about it at all.
What, the blind faith person or someone else?
No, just someone else. You're a person who doesn't think about God, the existence of God, whether it does or not. So the person who struggles with it and comes up with some kind of conclusion to say, no, definitely doesn't exist. They believe that very firmly. It's sort of an identity that they hold quite tightly. And I actually think that energy, that sort of position that is held, brings them closer to God than the person who, goes and watches the football, drinks a beer, doesn't give a toss about, anything to do with it, spirituality or not, doesn't care, doesn't want to even think about it. Do you know what I mean? So I think the people who fight with it more are actually just, a little stone's throw away, a little nudge, a little push, rather than somebody who doesn't give it any time of day.
Yeah, I've heard this sentiment uttered from monks as well, that some people who are atheists, they actually spent time and thought about it and came to that conclusion. I don't want to throw people who are of traditional belief all under the bus, because I've seen some, especially my older relatives that I have, that felt very Christian, strong Christian beliefs, and at times I felt like it helped them get through difficult times. So I think it can. I think there is still some spirituality also in like people sometimes when they follow the traditional religion or belief system. But yeah, I definitely think just because someone is an atheist doesn't mean he's like super far removed from God. I think he's actually made a step towards using his determination and using his discrimination and trying to seek truth. Yeah.
There's a few different types of atheists. I think there's one where it's like a destructive, self-destructive and surrounding destructive atheist, where nothing matters anyway. So this is it. This is the end of. So like environment doesn't matter. Relationships don't matter. I can do this and that, and there's no ramifications because there's no karma, there's no God, there's no judgment, all that stuff. There's that which is the most destructive element, and I think they are obviously probably the worst of humanity in that respect. But the good type of atheist is the one that creates his own moral code. So he's all fair enough. He doesn't want to benefit from sages and saints and God and scripture because he's doubtful. But if you create your own, because some of it is quite it's already inbuilt in our value system, right? With that, regardless of which religion you belong to, like what a good parent would teach a child is similar across cultures and across faiths, right? So if you imbibe all these good elements of moral conduct and good behavior, and you create your own kind of method of applying it to your life, then it's not too bad, is it? It's not a terrible way to live, but that's beneficial, I think, as opposed to the other side of the coin, where I have met those as well. It doesn't matter, and I'll do what I want when I want, kind of people.
Yeah, and it's like your set of morals and how you live almost become your religion in a non-spiritual sense. But from experience, it's so touching when you see that, you know, the things that you'd been living by in your atheist mind were actually very much in line with the spiritual path, and you realize the unity in it and actually the reality of the spiritual life, right? And yeah, I think, yeah, Chris, I like what you said there about, you know, sometimes those people are just a stone's throw away, and I think it's true, isn't it? But we're all on our journey, and sometimes I think having to be away from God, that's part of our karma, right? And we don't know why that was, but you know, there was a reason. And sometimes that can bring us closer if we let it, once we start to let it in.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like that. That I think that's a subject that everyone has an opinion on, right? It's very that has to do with everyone's spiritual journey. I think that's very good. That resonates with all of us. So Guruji goes on and he says that Yukteswar's words, they have an impact. They make Dijen try to discover within himself a realer self than the shallow ego of transient incarnation. So he's really trying to seek that soul consciousness inside of him.
And it further emphasizes this point here where he says that the trivial preoccupations of daily life don't satisfy our deepest needs, i.e. for wisdom, for which man has a native hunger. And this got me thinking about the out and out materialists, where they just seek just hunger, being satiated by their desires and whims, essentially. But then if you analyze them, you'll see that they're all temporary and they don't leave a permanent feeling of being satisfied, right? So like the mundane desires and just consistently satiating them, i.e. the materialism or like sensual pleasures, they generally, if you really reflect without even God consciousness, you will see that they're negative. They actually have a lower, impact in your life than if you didn't do them. So yeah, I think that's part of the wisdom that we're all after, the native hunger that that he's speaking of.
Yeah. I think we can probably all kind of find ourselves in someone like Dijen, right? Who would, I wouldn't mind meeting Mukunda in school, and he takes me to shit.
Yeah.
And then he keeps telling how they after classes were over, they would walk together. They would get into the habit and walk together to the ashram, Sri Yukteswar, and he says we would often see Sri Yukteswar standing on a second floor balcony welcoming our approach with a smile. Quite the scene. I think I would be very happy to do that.
Do you think this is a slight subtle nod to Sri Yukteswar's omniscience? The fact that, you know, he knows what's going on. You know, he's already up on the balcony. He knows they're coming and he's going to welcome them. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, imagine that's kind of a symbolism, right? Your guru is waiting for you and second floor balcony of the hermitage, waiting for you with a smile. I wish that there was a picture of that. I would hang it in my room. Yeah. Oh, great. It looks like it started raining behind Chris.
Yeah, it's pouring. It's pouring down heavily. Yeah. Might not look like it, but it's tropical rainfall.
I can see it coming off the roof.
Yeah. That's why it's so green there, because you guys get plenty of rain.
Yep.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Amazing. So then comes the actual meat of this chapter. There's something happens here. So we feel like that Mukunda and Dijen, they're good friends. They both go to the hermitage. They're both inspired by Sri Yukteswar. Okay, so now there is a young hermitage resident called Kanai, and he met them one day when they came, and he told them Sri Yukteswar is not here today, and that was disappointing because we just talked about that image. You come to the hermitage, you're hoping Sri Yukteswar is on that balcony looking, awaiting you happily, but he's not here because he went to Kolkata. He had some urgent matter to attend there. And then they received a postcard. I love how communication worked back then. Like, get a postcard the next day by Sri Yukteswar, which is also great. Like I don't know if you guys are like, whenever you have memorabilia from any spiritual or saint, you would keep it forever, right? Like if you had a postcard from Sri Yukteswar, you would probably keep that on your altar or somewhere.
One of the monks wrote me a card a few years ago, so I've kept that one close to in my journal. But postcards these days are they really a thing anymore? Because like, if I send you a postcard, and no doubt I'd write something about Guruji and something loving in there, but then the postman's definitely going to read it, isn't he? He's definitely gonna.
That's right, of course.
Maybe then he'll know about Guruji.
Yeah, he would. So maybe we should do it just to convert the postman unknowingly. But yeah, that's a good idea. But yeah, but in terms of private things, it's nowadays everything's enclosed. But back then, like, no one really cared about. Only 2 decades ago, no one really cared about. Oh, postman might read this. Oh well. Whereas now you definitely don't want to today in today's privacy-centered world.
Yeah. I'm old enough to remember the times when we went on summer vacation to Italy or Croatia. We would send postcards home to my aunts and stuff. That's not a thing anymore, is it? I read in the news like a few weeks ago that I think the Danish post office stops mailing letters from next year onwards, and they will only do packages.
No.
I was like, wow, what's going on?
Wow. Email is finally truly taken over.
Yeah, my gosh.
Send me a text.
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember when I sent a letter the last time. But it still came as a shock. Yeah. But I think this is something that in maybe a few decades this will be gone altogether. So we can say we still remember the days. Yeah. Anyways, so he sent him a postcard the next day, and he said, I shall leave Kolkata Wednesday morning, and you and Dijen meet me at 9 at Serampore station. So it's so nice, actually, right? It's like he knows they want to see him, and so they will go pick him up from the train station when he arrives.
What's your best guess as to what picture was on the top of the postcard, on the front side of it?
The Taj Mahal.
Do you think it was Queen Victoria? Was it Victoria?
I was going to say some British thing, right?
Yeah,
be
must
strong
be
and carry on. Yeah.
It must have been a British thing, but it could have been something.
Best Twinings tea from Assam.
But knowing Sri Yukteswar, he would have picked something potentially scientific, maybe scientist, new scientist discovery or something like that.
Sure. Yes. I wish this would still exist, this postcard. Yeah. I wonder if we'll ever be able to find out, if we'll ever be able to look into the past and see.
A postcard would be worth a lot of money, man.
Yeah. I think we would all be trying to pin
crowdfund me.
That's right. Yeah. So they were a bit disappointed, but then he said,
Mike,
come Wednesday.
you should explain to future generations that may listen to the podcast, even now 18-year-olds, what a postcard is. They probably won't even know.
That's true.
So it's like because that became popular again, it's like a Polaroid picture, and then you turn it around and you write stuff on it and mail it. That's kind of a
Around the back of it, yeah. So it's open, no envelopes required. That's the unique feature.
No envelope required.
Just a stamp, a pasty stamp.
And usually you buy it with a local motive on it, because you would send them from, like we said earlier, from the place where you're doing your vacation, or you have been traveling, like you are in Egypt and you get a postcard with the pyramids, and then you send it, and then people get jealous. I think that was a real reason for postcards. It was like a humble brag.
Look where I am. But that's pretty much what people do in social media now anyway, don't they?
Yeah.
Yes. So before Instagram, there were postcards, and that's how you did your humble brags back then. Look at me, I'm here. Great. So then, it's 8:30 on Wednesday morning. So just before, they were gonna pick him up at 9 a.m. So half an hour before. Mukunda. Oh yeah, before that. Right?
It's quite nice of Sri Aghadeshwara to give him advanced warning.
Yes.
saying don't come, I'm not going to make my train. So then Mukunda could spend maybe a bit more time meditating.
Yeah.
I always find that when I have a something to do, if I've got a schedule that requires something to be done at 9 or 10 or whatever, I always feel like I'm pushing the meditation to the very limit of the time that I need to get out and get ready. So this message from Sri Aghadeshwara would be most welcome, because then I could spend 10 to 15 more minutes in meditation or chanting or silence, stillness.
Yeah. And in the times back then, there wasn't really a way to communicate that quickly, right? Like today, you would probably send a WhatsApp message or something, a text message to both of them and say, I'm delayed, I'll be on the next train or something like that. But back then, there wasn't a way. But Sri Aghadeshwara tried telepathy. He was like, I wonder if he was trying to talk to both of them or just to Mukunda. I think we will know by the end of the chapter.
I think it's both.
It's both, right?
Yeah.
But Mukunda receives it. Mukunda receives a clear message from Sri Aghadeshwara, and he says, it flashed insistently to my mind. He says, I am delayed. Don't meet the 9 o'clock train. Okay. So now Mukunda is in a pickle, right? He has his information and he has to share it with Dijen, and we'll see how he reacts. The whole idea of the mental message is interesting, like we said earlier. But before, Priyank, did you want to?
Yeah. Finish what you're saying. Your line of thought was probably what I was going to say.
Yeah. I was just going to say that telepathy is not really something that Guruji finds something we should achieve on our spiritual path, but it is depending on how receptive we are. And there is a reading here that is kind of a story as well, where Guruji tries to send a mental message to a devotee and hoping he's receptive to it.
Yeah, so I was before we start that, this flashing insistently on my mind is different to what I perceive, like, well, when I get intuitive vibes, they kind of just drop, and then you're like, oh, you realize, oh, this is what I need to do, right? And usually in meditation or after meditation, when you're just sitting in stillness, and then it's like a very subtle dropping, like a feather on your lap, that kind of feeling, right? Whereas this here is flashed insistently. So it's like
Mm.
you can imagine it's just flashing on his mind. It's like Sri Krishna's kind of knocking Mukunda just
Yeah.
again and again with this thing. So maybe Mukunda receives so many feathers that this one he wants him to actually like, you know, jar him a little bit with this because he's got to change his plans instantly.
Yeah. And still the Dijen is not receiving it. So yeah, you need to be tuned in. So there's a story in Man's Eternal Quest that is um, another example of where Guruji broadcast to one of his disciples. Do you want to start reading this out, Lauren?
Yep. Once, long ago, I saw that one of my students was going wrong. Foreseeing the impending tragic results, I brought out every possible reason that might dissuade him from the course his life was taking. But I saw that no amount of my willpower helped him, because he had made up his mind to follow the way of evil. All right, I told myself finally, it is goodbye. Let him go. But soon, my great love and concern for him came to the fore again. I sat under a banyan tree and began to visualize him.
Fervently and repeatedly, I broadcast to him a mental message. God has told me to command you to return. By evening, my body and mind were athrill with the intuition that he was coming. At last, there he was at the gate. The prodigal son, Chris, had come back to the fold. This is almost like Sri Krishna waiting for Dijen and Mukunda, isn't it? He pranamed and said, all day long, wherever I went and whatever I did, I beheld your image. What was it all about?
God was calling you through me, I replied. It was his call, not mine. There was no selfish motive in my desire, but I had made up my mind I wouldn't stir from this place until you came. That kind of determination can change the world. A marvelous power.
This is very similar to really good find,
Mhm.
Mike. Very similar to what happened with Mukunda here, isn't it? Except Sri Krishna is probably the one doing this. Sitting where Paramahansa Yogananda was in this case. So even in this case, Mukunda, Paramahansa Yogananda like made it like an insistent call. You know, the poor chap was like all day long, wherever I went, wherever I did, I beheld your image. So it's like a similar vibe.
Yeah, I would like that. Yeah, it is a really good feeling when you feel like your Guruji is taking care of you. He cares so much that he's trying to prevent bad things from happening in your life. Yeah, yeah, and that's what Sri Teshwar to an extent also did to both of them. He didn't want them to wait at the train station, being disappointed again, not finding him there. However, the message was only conveyed to Mukunda, and Dijen, he did not receive it. And now we get to the point where Mukunda tells Dijen, he said, I conveyed the latest instructions to Dijen, who was already dressed for departure because it was half an hour before the train arrived, so I assume they were getting ready to go. And then Dijen, he reacts, I don't know if it's expected, but he reacts, he says, you and your intuition. And then he said, my friend's voice was etched in scorn.
Mukunda's regularly surrounded in his young life, by doubting Thomases, isn't he? And Dijen has now been added to that long list of Thomases, even though his name is Dijen. But I find this interesting because that means even though Dijen may not have known Mukunda for very long, he's already used to Mukunda saying subtle things about, oh, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. And if Dijen could have verified all of those things, then he wouldn't say these things, right? So I get the feeling that Dijen would have experienced subtle intuitions that Mukunda that said that are unverifiable. Like, for example, if someone comes to Sri Yukteswar for healing, and then Sri Yukteswar blesses him, and then he leaves, some stranger, and then Mukunda just turns around to Dijen and going, that guy's been instantly healed, and Dijen is like, yeah, whatever, that's unverifiable, right? But Dijen's like used to Mukunda saying these kind of intuitive callings that he's been getting, but Dijen hasn't yet until today understood the power.
So I think there's one feeling here that I can kind of, because I was wondering, where's that scorn coming from, right? Why does this upset him? And I felt, have you ever had this feeling or the situation where you feel somebody is your peer, and your peer you feel like is someone who starts out with the same situation you are, and you're both going in the same direction. So if he outruns you, then it's on you basically, right? But you are now on the spiritual path with Mukunda, and he's an avatar, so he's gonna run laps around you, right? And that might be frustrating. I can imagine that this is kind of the situation here, that Dijen doesn't like this situation where he feels like Mukunda out. I don't know what the word is. Spiritual progress is him. Yeah.
Yeah, it's maybe just highlighting the flaw, the inner flaw. Like if you think about what is it you might need to be able to pick up something telepathically, you might need the things that only come through the work of meditation. So you're kind of naturally going to be a bit frustrated, like, the ego would naturally be a bit frustrated at that, thinking that, oh, it's got so far to go. So definitely reflects the mirror on his own ability.
Yeah, but I can emphasize, I must say, because he doesn't have the whole picture, right? He doesn't know really what's going on. He doesn't know this game is rigged. This is not.
Mukunda's not a regular boy.
Not a regular boy. Yeah. And then Dijen says something that kind of makes sense. Like he says, I prefer to trust Master's written word, right? Because it's here written in ink. I'll be there at 10. And no matter what you say.
Yeah, and previous line that was similar to this was, I'm assured by a clink of coins. When his friend, what was his name? When his friend wanted to not rely on God, and he wanted to have money.
I forgot already that his friend who went to Vrindavan with him.
Is that him? Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, there's something assuring about something that you can actually verify. I understand. And probably we can also say Dijen probably only recently met Mukunda, so he maybe hasn't known yet. What did you guys wonder why this was happening? Did you guys wonder, because this is a miracle that's happening here? Did you wonder, like, usually miracles are supposed to increase the belief, right? So do you feel like this is why this is happening?
Yeah, so in the end of this chapter, what's his name? Dijen kind of has a little inner transformation, because he was disappointed in himself that he didn't receive this calling. So like it had its desired effect for Dijen, I think, and then of course for all of us future generations that are analyzing this book and appreciating the messages.
Yeah. And for now, this hasn't set in yet. For now, we are where Mukunda just says, okay, Dijen, you have a good time at the train station now. I'll stay home. And he lets Dijen leave and closes the door. Dijen closes the door behind him noisily. So there's still some of that feeling of and frustration there.
This kind of reminds me very kind of loosely. Master says somewhere about how even if people misunderstand us, we should never lose our peace. And this is a really nice moment, because he doesn't say anything back. He just shrugs his shoulders and sits down with quiet finality. Like there's just nothing to say, because he knows the truth and he's not going to get into an argument with him. And Dijen is like the opposite in reaction, right? He becomes really angrily and he just, closes it noisily. And it's those really small moments that I love in the book because it teaches us so much. It's like, yeah, that's how you behave when someone doesn't understand your intuition. You just let them find out for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Mukunda did what he could have done. He told him, and Dijen did not like this. So now he's going to the train station. Yeah. And this is the first part of chapter 19. What's gonna await us in the next part, Frank?
Yeah, true. Mukunda, Chris, has realized the truth, hasn't he? What is the truth, Chris, from the Matrix? There is no
Of
spoon.
left fields. There is no spoon.
There is no spoon.
It's not 42. Okay. Yeah.
I probably wasn't going to come up with that answer. So
Oh no, come on, that's one of those famous lines.
Nice.
So looking ahead, we're going to review the magical and mystical appearance of Suryakteshwar and all its glorious detail, the teleportation or the reformation of his atoms from one place to another. We'll discuss which one is more likely, and he kind of explains it as well. There's lots to hypothesize on in terms of how and why that happened, and also we're going to bring some readings in about being receptive to Guruji, of course, and then we're going to talk about a little bit about energization. You'll be surprised to know that it somehow features in this little section. There's blessings from touching our Guru's feet, and I think they're realized in this next chapter, the next section of the chapter, because they're realized straight away because Sri Yukteswar puts his hands on Mukunda's head to grant him an instant blessing next, and there's some very subtle nuances that I want to explore there too.
Excellent. Yeah, looking forward to the next episode. But for today, we've concluded. Thank you to the listeners and thank you to the crew. Jai Guru, everybody.
Jai Guru.